to another episode of Healthcare IT Unplugged. I'm Sudipto Banerjee, Elite Advisor at Healthcare IT Leaders, and formerly I was the SVP for Tufts Medicine, where I was the SVP for operations, HR operations. Today I'm going to be answering 5 questions. The first one that you heard just now about Workday HR transformation. How should the health system align objectives, right? So, just as a prelude, when you start implementing Workday or you are starting to do the HR transformation, you may have done some comprehensive technology selection. You have looked into your processes and you have very likely arrived in one of the large technology providers like Workday or some other future solution. So before you embark on the journey, it is really important that you make sure that all the stakeholders are on board with you. Some of them may have participated with you at the time of the selection, some of them may have not participated with you, but it is really important that they're all on board with you and they have a common goal and a common purpose in front of you. The other thing which is also important here is that you must understand that the business is constantly changing and the needs of the business should be realigned before the implementation starts. I'll give you some example. When you are looking for, let's say, speed of hire, or you're looking for more controls on the positions, these are two different ways of approaching your configuration. And you must have a good sense that what you would want to accomplish. Maybe for a certain section of your society or for a section of your population, you would want speed, but in certain population, you might want some more controls. So you should have some idea about your talent strategy. I'll give another example. Before starting the implementation, you may have outsourced some of your processes like recruiting processing and some other processes, that you may have outsourced because you didn't have the technology, or maybe you didn't have the processes, or maybe you didn't have a good, service operating model. But you would be having that very soon. So keeping all of that, the futuristic possibilities that is coming with your new technology, it is really imperative that you start thinking more broadly and start thinking more aligning that when you go to the architect sessions, what should you be doing? Typically, I would suggest that you should do some kind of a deployment readiness, which is basically trying to understand a little bit of a discovery as where you are right now, where you would want to go in the near future or near term or the long term. And then based on that, you come up with a strategy in order to align your solutions for the future. And how do we address the talent gap during the Workday implementation? This is a very important question and very important step ahead of you. Remember that you're going through a major transformation, which would require a lot of your time, a lot of your energy and focus to make this transformation successfully possible. So I would probably say that you start with 3 major areas that you should be focusing. The first one is that how do we increase capacity? And during this time of the implementation, the most important thing is that if there is something that you do not absolutely need during the time of the implementation, please eliminate any work not needed and so as to free up your capacity. In normal operations, we do a lot of things, but that may not be needed. The second thing is that you have to increase your capacity through some kind of augmentation of your team. You would be having systems integrators typically who would be implementing with you. But however, you should be looking at some external plans as augmenting your team and making sure that you've got enough capacity to run through this implementation process. The third thing I would say is that it is really important that some of your team members are going to be really critical in the implementation process. Make sure that all these critical team members are trained and they're motivated throughout this journey. They would be spending a lot of their personal time. They would be spending a lot of their, using a lot of their skills and their knowledge that they're acquired, and you would need them throughout this process. Make sure that they do not burn out and they are available with you throughout this transformation process. The biggest challenge that you normally would face is that how do you balance between operations and the project needs? And there are timelines which are set in the project time frame, which most of the cases is non-negotiable, and sometimes they're very tight, and they are, to be very honest with you, it is overwhelming. And most organizations in general, they are in operational mode, they're not in a project mode, so they really don't quite understand how a project works. So you have to put some extra effort to make people aware of what is operations, what is project, and how do you balance between project and operations. Granted that you are already taking care of your capacity to some extent, and you're expanding or augmenting your capacity to some extent. The second big challenge that I have normally seen is that the end-to-end design and testing. You know, you are in an ecosystem. You are exchanging data from many different systems, upstream, downstream, and so on. And the point that I would like to make here is that you should be aware of is that there are a lot of those upstream or downstream applications may be impacted because of this implementation. So they have no interest whatsoever to make this project successful. In fact, on the contrary, if this project is not successful, they would be benefited the most. So therefore, how do you keep them engaged? How do you make sure that they are working with you and making sure that they are going to make this successful for you? The third part of it is that you need very strong leadership. Oftentimes, as we've seen, is that once the project starts, all the excitement and the initial energy that kind of drains away very, 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 very quickly, and then everybody likes to move on. But now you're really holding the bags, and you're holding the bags when you're making the changes. You're making some very important decisions. So you need the strong leadership. You need the drive, that change with courage. You have to close issues very, very quickly. You have to make some good decisions. And in all, you still have to continue to bring excitement and fun for everybody. When they have customized their HR systems for some specific business needs, they sometimes are wondering that all this customization, it was done for a need for a business. Now what do we do with that? So my take on this is this. Maybe you had done some of the customization because some of those features and the capabilities of the product was not present earlier. But now with Workday, maybe some of those capabilities are now present, and maybe you would not need that customization anymore. So I would say that you should take a careful consideration if you still see the business reason to carry forward those customization or not. But you do have some options here. The number one option I would say is that look into Workday for configuration and see through some creative and innovative ways, would you still be able to customize or configure it, not customize, sorry. So configure it and still see the same business outcome and the same business results. Secondly, I would say that in case if you still see that the configuration is not good enough or will not serve your purpose, then I would ask you to do a little more research and see that you would want to really build that out. Workday produces a platform which is called as Workday Extend, and some of those customization could be built in Extend, and once it is built in Extend, it could be used just like any other customization you had in the past. In addition to that, if you still see that it's not something which is viable, then I would ask you to go out and explore the community. I definitely encourage you to read through some of the user groups, what they are saying about it. Maybe there are some other solutions, either through an alliance partnership or some kind of an extended bolt-on solutions, which is available with Workday. You should be looking for those, but try to keep that as a minimum as possible. Take advantage of the features and the capabilities provided by Workday. Trust me, it's going to probably solve more than 80-85% of your needs. No matter how well you have implemented, so do not blame yourself that it has not gone 100% perfect. You try to perfect it as much as possible. The very next logical step is that try to stabilize, which means is that maybe you had the best design you had in your mind, but it still didn't work. So you put some kind of a manual intervention somewhere, or you are doing some work manually just to get by. And those are the ones that you need to automate and stabilize as quickly as possible. Following stabilization, and they're not exactly linear, so while you're doing the stabilization, you can now start thinking about some optimization as well. While you're doing that, now you should probably start thinking about, if there's some new modules coming in, what would those modules be? How would you be able to implement them? What should be the sequence of this implementation? So start thinking about that. Even if you did have a big bang, I'm sure that there are a lot of modules you could not implement in the first round. So I would very much suggest that you create a roadmap for going forward. And while you're doing that, also make sure that you're checking on the upcoming releases for testing and for implementation, because some of those capabilities that you were not able to build it may be coming through some of the new releases. As you know, Workday has 2 releases every year, and you get a note of those releases before the implementation. So once you get those, you start evaluating and then creating a roadmap on that. In addition to that, I would say that, as the systems implementers, they have implemented with you, it was probably a long stretch, a year, 2 years, it could be even more. As they're moving on to their next project, I think you need to focus some of your time and energy in building your team capabilities. And when I say team capabilities, you should take a very strategic look as what kind of skills and what kind of a capability should you be building it in-house, and what kind of capability should you be augmenting it going forward. I do not advise anybody to build all capabilities or all the different kind of skills internally, because you may not need them. So look at the volume of the work, look at the work that would be needed more often than the other. So those are the ones, depending on the volume, depending on the type of the work, you would be building your skills, team and the skills. Rest all about maybe 15 to 20% of the work that you would be needing them very sporadically. Maybe you should start considering it as having a third party providing you with those type of support. So it's the optimization, stabilization, optimization, enhancement of the product, of the processes, and of your team.